This is Fireside Chat with me, Johnny B. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show. This is another day, another beautiful day that the Lord has made. We rejoice in it. This is Fireside Chats with me, Johnny B, and we are sitting down today with another Marine Corps veteran. We're sitting down with Paul Browitz. So Paul's going to tell his story of, him, where he grew up and how that translated to him joining the Marines, everything he experienced and how his recovery looked once he started walking with Christ. So without further ado, Paul, how are you, man?
Is well with my soul, friend. I'm really happy to be here, John. I'm really a fan of what the podcast is about. I'm really looking forward to this today. I'm super stoked to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So tell us a little bit about you, man. Where did you grow up?
So I'm a West Texas kid. I grew up in a little place called Wolforth, which is attached to a not so little place called Lubbock, Texas. You might have heard of Texas Tech.
Can't say that rings a bell.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, if you're from Texas, I couldn't see how that would. But no, I grew up in Lubbock. I was born in Arizona. Mom moved me here as fast as she could. I lived here from the time I was 2 until I grew up and left home when I was 19. So I had a pretty typical easygoing childhood. My parents, they were good people, but they didn't love Jesus. My dad had a pretty jacked up childhood himself. His father kind of split when he was about 5 years old. His fondest memory of his old man was chasing his mom around the backyard with a shovel in his hand, trying to bash her skull in. It was not a pleasant experience for him, dude. Yeah. So there's family, like the generational kind of trauma thing kind of played into effect with that. Had some pretty rough bouts with my old man growing up. And I always, it's hard because I love my dad. He and we have a great relationship today. We hang out. He hangs out with my children. Like, he's not a dangerous man, but he was not a healthy man when I was growing up by any stretch of the imagination. So that was kind of the environment that I grew up in as a kid. And I spent summers in northeastern Oklahoma with my grandparents, which is really where I got my first exposure to the Lord. My mom's dad and stepmother were both born again, full blood, holy rolling Pentecostals, First Assembly of God. And so that's how I got introduced to Jesus as a kid. And so I would spend summers with them until I was about like 9 or 10 or something like that. And then I just started spending summers at home. And while I was introduced to the Lord, I wouldn't call myself a faithful Christ follower. I attempted to follow Jesus when I was a kid. I went to church camp when I was a teenager, learned how to play guitar, mostly because, girls are pretty and they like dudes who can sing and play guitar and that kind of thing. And so,
yeah, I've heard that. I've heard
you know what I mean? So I'm being honest about where I was then. I thought I knew who Jesus was. Like, I read my Bible, but I really had no concept of really who Jesus was. Like, I wouldn't call myself a Jesus lover like I am today. That's not a thing when I was a kid.
Right.
And so as I was growing up with my old man, the issues that we would have, it really kind of put a little bit of a savior complex on me as a kid, really. And I'm still in therapy right now as we speak, trying to kind of sort through a lot of this stuff, to figure out why it was exactly that I decided to join the Marines of all the branches of service. Because my mom was, I come from a military background. Mom was in the Navy, aunt was in the Navy, grandfather was in the Air Force, uncle was in the Air Force, great grandfather was in the Army, other great grandfather was in the Marine Corps. They fought in World War II and that kind of thing.
Oh, wow.
So it's not like it wasn't a family tradition. Family. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? It's not like it wasn't a family tradition. It absolutely was. But the Marine Corps of all places, my mom was an ABT med tech in the Navy. She was she was in the 70s. She was there for the fire on the Belknap and the Kennedy. And she really, she told me straight up, dude, whatever you do, if you join the military, don't join the Marine Corps. And if you do, for God's sake, don't become a grunt. So what did I do? I joined the Marine Corps as a grunt, dude. I was like,
exactly what she told you not to do.
Yeah, exactly. The exact opposite of that. And so I think, like many kids, I was that dork that bought the bull crap line, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. really just, I watched things like Heartbreak Ridge, and I was like, dude, I want to be Gunny Highway. Like, who doesn't want to be that, Billy Bad A, that really tough guy. And I felt like I had something to prove. There were some incidents that I had with my dad. One that was really pretty traumatic that kind of, looking back now, that kind of forced me on that trajectory of wanting to do something like that, to be the hero of my own story, so to speak. And that's really, I think, what led me to join the Marine Corps specifically, as opposed to the other branches. Because I went, the Air Force was going to allow me to go in and pick pretty much whatever job. I aced the ASVAB. I didn't go in the grunts because I was stupid. Other than just, not really thinking about my future.
Other than just being a kid.
Yeah, a dumb kid who didn't really know what he was getting himself into. I joined in 2000, May of 2000. So this is like right before 9/11.
Oh yeah, you joined shortly after I did. I went in January of 2000.
Yeah, so we're pretty much on the same kind of trajectory, in that the USS Cole bombing happened while I was in basic, and that kind of thing. And so it really was it wasn't something I wasn't one of those post 9/11 kids that joined to go punch a Haji in the face. I joined because I wanted, college money, and I wanted to see the world. And dude, I met the girl that my brain dropped into my pants, and I wasn't thinking with the head that was on my shoulders. And I had made a bunch of stupid decisions that really kind of got my life into a place of shambles.
Mm-hmm.
And I needed to do something with my life.
Right.
And it was either, I did the college thing for a couple of semesters, and I didn't fail out. It wasn't for me.
Yeah.
Like, that was kind of I think, we're around the same age and that sort of thing. That kind of generation, they pushed the college thing like it was the thing you needed to do.
Yeah, they did.
If you weren't getting a college education, dude, you were an idiot. And and I have a college degree now. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but
I'm still working on mine.
There's nothing wrong with that. It's a good thing to get an education. It just wasn't for me then.
Yeah.
And so I joined up. I walked into the recruiting office, the recruiting station. I had talked to the guy a couple of months prior to actually signing the line. He's like, "Hey man, you're a really hard dude to find." It's like, "Yeah, I know. I make it that way on purpose." And I said, "I want to go grunt, and I want to go tomorrow before I lose my nerve." And he handed me the paperwork, that was like 6 copies, press hard 6 copies. That at the time, I think it was maybe 150 question questionnaire. He said, yes stands for your enlistment stops. No stands for new opportunities. And so I answered the questionnaire, did all the stuff, took the ASVAB. He's like, "Hey, you aced it. You can have any job in the Marine Corps you want." I was like, "I want to go grunt." And to Sergeant Hinesby's credit, man, that dude, I didn't get screwed over by my recruiter like some people do. Like, he tried.
Yeah.
Bless his heart, he tried. He was
trying to say, "Hey, you want a real job."
Straight up. He offered me counter intel, and looking back on it now, dude, I could be working for the government, making 6 figures easy with some GS 18 rating or something like that, man. But I as a kid, all I wanted to do was go grunt, and I wanted to go. I wanted to get out. And so I joined, it was May of 2000, left for boot camp, did the whole dance there for the 13 weeks of misery, 13 weeks of hell.
Now, did you go to Lejeune or Pendleton?
Pendleton.
Okay.
Everybody west of the Mason-Dixon line goes to Pendleton, goes to the West Coast. And that's for both your, I guess in the Army, they call it AIT. For us, it was SOI, School of Infantry.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went and did that gig. I think it took us 3 months to get through the training and all that. And it wasn't that the training was 3 months. It took that long because of having to wait for other cycles to pick up and all that jazz. But I got done with that. And of course, you're waiting for your duty station. I was like, please God, California. I wanted West Coast. I didn't want the East Coast. That's all I knew. I didn't want sand fleas. And I ended up on the East Coast in the second half of my enlistment, but of my career there. So they gave me Hawaii. I was like, yes, this is awesome. And I show up, everything's dope. Of course, you get to a new unit, they're going to haze the new kids and all that stuff. But for the most part, back then, when I say hazing, it wasn't like hazing that went on in the early, 80s and early 90s, the 80s and early 90s and that kind of stuff.
Right.
What Slowford was talking about with
just a good natured breaking the new kid in.
Yeah, it was like, hey, stand at parade wrestling, you talk to me, maggot, and other words that were, inappropriate for us to mention in polite company.
Right.
That kind of stuff. Go scrub the toilet with a toothbrush. You're on UFO watch. They set you up, on the roof for, all night and that sort of stuff. Stupid stuff. It wasn't like beating you up or, hey, let's put a brand to you or anything like that.
No, just sending you on stupid tasks.
Yeah, exactly. Go get the ID 10 Tango form, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so for the most part, everything was cool. Like I had one of my senior Marines was, he was this cool cat. He was a corporal in another platoon, so he could be cool with me. It didn't matter because we weren't in the chain of command together. And he basically told me, said, bro, here's how it's going to go down. You're going to spend the rest of your 4 years, all 4 years of your first enlistment right here in Hawaii. They're not going to send you anywhere because it costs too much money to PCS you. And they're not going to do that for 1 year. You PCS every 3 years in the Marines. I was like, oh, this is awesome. He said, so basically get yourself a surfboard, dude. Welcome to your 4 years of paradise. So I'm thinking, dude, this is awesome. We're going to be here in Hawaii. You go on UDP, Unit Deployment Program was the thing at the time. And we did. We went on deployment to Okinawa. I was there in the unit, I think, for maybe 6 months or something like that, dude. And we went on our first pump. And we get to Okinawa, Japan. It's awesome. I'm a musician. I was playing in rock bands before I joined. And that kind of, I joined because, hey, I'll get the college money. I'll go do the commercial music thing at South Plains College. When I get out, I use the money to do that. And when I was at Okinawa, I was like, this is great. They have bars where I can go play music in and that sort of stuff in my off time. And basically, when you're on pump, dude, all you do is just work out and drink. I mean, that's facts. When you're not a believer or anything, that's all you did. And so I would.
And Marines are good at that.
Yeah, we were very good at tech game. I think the only ones that gave us a run for our money were the Australian, the Australian Army that we trained with. Yeah, those were the only guys that gave us a run for our money in that particular event. But at any rate, it was a good time. And then 9/11 hit. And then, as you well know, dude, when 9/11 hit, it switched from a wartime Marine Corps from a peacetime Marine Corps to a wartime Marine Corps. And life just got crazy.
Yeah, and a snap of a finger.
Yeah, and it was crazy how quick that happened. I remember I was over at my girlfriend's house, or my girlfriend's dorm room, barracks room or whatever. And we were hanging out, watching TV, and out of nowhere, I saw the first plane hit the tower. And I thought I was watching an episode of that movie Airplane, that stupid, cheesy 1970s movie. I thought it was like a trailer or something. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I was like, surely to God, that's not really a thing. And then the second plane hit. And we heard everybody screaming in the hallway. We ran down to the rec area. And everybody was just kind of talking like, we're going to war. We're going to war. I'm like, shut up. Y'all are pogues. You're not doing anything. I am. And I ran across the quad. It was Typhoon Condition 1. We were all on lockdown, and we were supposed to just stay in the barracks until the storm blew over. And I get across the way. And I remember getting into my room, getting a shower, getting dried off and all that stuff. And I immediately started putting on camis because I knew we were a part of the MAGTAF, the ground force for the air contingency MAGTAF for Southwest Asia. So that was our Afghanistan, all that crap. That was our AO. Like that was our thing. And I remember they were like, hey, you go just chill out in your room for whatever. And then our sergeant came and knocked on the door, and he called me by my name. I'll never forget that. Call me Paul. And I remember going, dude, this is weird because this dude hates my guts. I mean, we're not friends. You're not calling me Paul unless something's really bad. It's like, yo, tell your roommate Scab, you guys go to the armory, grab your weapon, and then get to the rec room, grab your ammo, and then go back to your rooms. Well, there's a whole unholy host of problems with everything in that statement. Like Marines are not allowed in their room with their weapon, let alone with a weapon and ammo. Like that's not a thing. You don't do that. This violates all sorts of protocols. And I remember sitting there with my saw, my squad automatic weapon on my lap, and I had 2 saw drums of ammo on me and a drum loaded into the weapon system. And I remember when I was standing in line, they were like, hey man, let everybody know if they're green tips or if there's nothing on them. I was like, what's the difference? Well, if it's green tips, you're going to go do something because they give you new ammo. But if it's not, dude, it's just, reused guard ammo, dude, no big deal. And one of the first guys was like, green tips. And, everybody went nuts with false bravado and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, this is awesome. Let's go get some. And I remember sitting in my room with all that crap on my body, looking at my roommate, going, seriously questioning every life decision I had made.
It just got really real, really fast.
Really, really quick. And so, long story short, we ended up securing an airfield. Nothing big, and we just kind of did fire watch, and we thought so it was a kind of a scary thing for that. That wasn't a big deal. But then, you come back, and then all the stuff pops off with Iraq. Everybody's talking about Iraq, and we're like, dude, what are you talking about? Did you guys need a geography lesson? Iraq and Afghanistan are two different countries. Like, that's not a thing. And then one of my friends was like, no, bro, George Bush done called Saddam Hussein out like some old school cowboy in a Wild West flick, bro. Check this out. And he played for me the newsreel. I'm like, oh, great. That's awesome, dude. And so then we ended up doing deployments up there. And really, I didn't do much whenever I went from my deployment to Iraq. I did a lot of guard duty and stuff and convoys, that kind of crap. But we lost, I lost 7 friends within like the first, I think, 48 hours we were on the ground. That whole thing, when all was said and done, we ended up having 76 funerals altogether for dudes that we had lost during that deployment. And I came home from that and re-upped, went to Quantico, spent my time at Quantico for 4 years, and then I got out and came home. At Quantico, I did training. I trained butter bars lieutenants. I basically did like a knowledge dump of everything that we had. So it was a cool time there because I got to take all the things that I'd learned and share that knowledge with other people, which is, I think, kind of lended to what God is doing in my life now, as a pastor and a teacher with the Bible and that sort of thing. And it really is a disciple maker. I think I didn't realize it at the time. God was using that to groom me. Even when I wasn't a believer, he was already starting to pull some of those things out of me in my life. But as I was in Quantico, I was like, hey, this is cool. I'm going to teach butter bars for a living. And I got started a rock band and all that stuff while I was there. We had a great time. There wasn't really much to tell with that, but it was a lot of survivor's guilt because there were constantly guys going overseas that were my friends. They were going back for multiple tours and that kind of thing. A lot of them coming home in body bags and flag draped coffins and that sort of deal. And it just, man, that part of it it wrecked me. And we trying to come home. I was trying to like really just make up for not dying, which I know it sounds kind of weird. But you have these thoughts in your head, dude, where you wish it was you instead of them.
Yeah, I get it.
You feel guilty. You know what I'm saying? You feel guilty. And I mean, if somebody's listening to this and they were in that position, dude, like when it's your time, it's your time. I don't care how fast you run. It's your time. When God calls you home, God's calling you home. And there's nothing you can do about that. You're not, the whole wondering, what if I was there? Could I have saved so-and-so? Could I have done this? Or could I have done something else to help them? No, it's not like you were going to be fast enough to, deflect the shrapnel from the IED or, catch the bullet that, killed them or something. That's not how any of that works. And so I spent a lot of my time when I got home trying to just make my life worth it, like make the sacrifices that they made somehow worth it. And I started a rock band called Gold Star Revenge, and where all the songs were about, my time in the military and that sort of thing, and about the guys that we had lost, and really just trying to remind people that, hey, we're still in the middle of a war, folks. And when I came home, that really the trauma that really messed me up more than anything was what happened when I came home. My ex-wife and I, full disclosure, I have a divorce. When I got home, I got her pregnant. I should have, could have, would have, but didn't learn my lesson. I didn't really listen to what she said whenever we were getting together. She didn't want children.
Right.
But she said, hey, I don't want kids, but I would have them with you. That should have been a huge red flag for me to go, nope, that's not the chick that I need to be with. And again, I had this savior complex. I wanted to save her. She was in a relationship with a sailor who was he just wasn't a good dude. According to her, like, I don't have proof that he was selling coke and selling blow, but I've got suspicions enough to some of the activities he was doing whenever she and I were first together would make it suggest that way. But Okay. And according to her, he broke her ankle. He was physically abusive and verbally abusive. He cheated on her multiple times and stuff. And so I wanted to save somebody. And so she was the damsel in distress that I was down to do that with. And so when I got home in 2004, she and I got married, and we spent my second enlistment in Quantico. And when I came home, I got her pregnant, and she didn't want to be. Um, and so we ended up getting an abortion. And I say we specifically because I'm just as responsible for that as she is. Just like Adam, I
Right.
abdicated my responsibility as a husband and as a father, as a
Mhm.
man. I should have, could have, would have done a bunch of things different, but I didn't. I bought into that cultural lie that said, my job was to be the loving, sweet, supportive husband. It was her body, her choice, and that kind of thing. And so I took her to a Planned Parenthood clinic, dude, in Houston, Texas. And I sat in the waiting room and I played bowling on my Samsung rugby phone while some jackwagon murdered my child in the next room. And it hollowed me out inside worse than anything I ever did when I was in the military. Um,
Yeah.
I tried to love her through it for 4 more years. And at the end of it, I couldn't do it anymore. I was a porn addict. When she and I had gotten together back in '04, uh, she was diagnosed with depression, which was a whole thing. I asked her when we got together because I had a history of drawing women that had mental mental illness was a thing, like depression, manic depression, bipolar disorder. I had a habit of getting girlfriends that were like this.
Hmm.
And I asked her, direct question, direct answer. Are you or how are you, have you ever in your life been diagnosed with any sort of mental disorder, such as depression, manic depression, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, or any other mental illness? Direct answer. She said, no. Have you now, are you on now, or have you ever been prescribed by a doctor any of the following medications? And I rattled off like Wellbutrin, Paxil, like a whole host of different antidepressant and antipsychotic medication. And she was like, no. Well, 6 months into our marriage, she's clearly demonstrating signs of depression and mania. And so we take her to the doctor, and he's like, "Well, yeah, you clearly are clinically depressed, sweetheart. Like we he ran through the gambit, the battery of tests with her right there in front of me, and
Hmm.
she like failed all of them with flying colors."
Wow.
And he starts telling her all of the medications, and she's like, "No, I don't want to take that one because it makes me gassy. That one, makes me way too drowsy. I can't function." So she clearly lied to me about all of that stuff. So
Yeah, because how would
during
she
that
know if
time,
one makes her gassy? If
yeah, because she had taken all of them
right.
before, bro, straight
Wow.
up. And then she confesses in that moment in front of the doctor. It was just a horrible time there. But and she starts crying. He's like, "What's wrong? What's going on?" And she's like, "Well, I'm afraid he's going to leave me, and he's going to cheat on me like my ex-husband did, and all this stuff, because of the medication. It has certain side effects in that particular area of a husband and wife's relationship." And I, he puts his hand on my shoulder, and he looks at her and says, "Don't worry about him," and then looks at me and goes, "We'll get him a video and a magazine, and he'll be fine." And unbeknownst to that doctor,
Seriously?
which seriously, dude,
Wow.
that started an 8 year porn addiction, like straight up 8 year, no, probably 10 year porn addiction. We'll leave it that because it started a little bit before that, but it really went into overdrive for the 8 years that she and I were married. Um, and I traded her in for a 2D image on a screen, and it really affected everything. Now that I'm clean from that, like that's part of what God has set me free from. Um, I didn't realize at the time what all that was doing to me mentally and how that was teaching me to treat. How that was teaching me to treat people.
Hmm.
I didn't realize that it was teaching me to use people as like disposable items just for my, pleasure and my, um, really my amusement, if you will.
Yeah.
And um, we get the abortion happens and all that. She and I, we try to love each other through it for 4 years. We can't. We're fighting all the time. We're not, being intimate together at all. And finally, it just gets to the point where I'm like, dude, you need to pack your stuff and head over to Kentucky. She drags her feet and makes it we didn't have any kids, obviously, because of the abortion.
Right.
And she made the divorce drag out for like 6 months. We ended up in mediation. Even the people at mediation were like, we have never seen one of these go for 8 hours without children being involved. This is just ridiculous. She was dragging it out just to make it expensive on me.
Mm-hmm.
And we ended up, the divorce is done. So at that point, I go headlong off the deep end of my sin. I was already a functioning drunk at that point, drinking about a gallon of SoCo 100 proof a night. And I had gotten on all the, websites and all that stuff for dating and all that. And I was sleeping with any woman that would have me. And I got to a point, man, where I was popping pills for a back injury that I got while I was in too. And it got to a point, man, where I was like, dude, if this is as good as life gets, I don't want to be here anymore. And it wasn't like a simple, oh, I think I'm just going to, in a rash moment of weakness, like going off myself.
Mm-hmm.
I was legit, like I thought it through. I went and got my will and testament done for the house that I had just won in the divorce and all of that. Got paperwork drawn up so that it would be in my mom's name, so it'd be easy for her, so she didn't have to go through a bunch of stuff. Like I went that detailed with it. Wrote letters home to my dad and to my mom, to my bandmates at the time, and my friends, telling them it's not you. There's nothing you could have done. I didn't reach out to you on purpose. I didn't want to be talked out of this. And I went home. I drank half a gallon of SoCo. Went into the shower like I was trying to be as respectful as possible to whoever was going to have to find me.
Mm-hmm.
And I put the barrel of that pistol in my mouth. And as I depressed the thumb safety and engaged the grip safety on that 1911, I put my finger on the trigger. And as I put my finger on the trigger, a real and audible voice called me by my name. Paul, what are you doing? Don't do this. I love you. I don't hate you. Hear me out. If you don't like what I got to say, all you're going to lose is time. Give me your life. You're going to throw it away. Give me your life. And I promise you, a year from now, it's going to be radically different. And
wow.
That voice proceeded to tell me all the ways that he had pushed me out of the way of bombs and bullets and stuff that were meant for me. All the times he guided my truck home when I was too drunk to drive and kept me from getting DUIs and all sorts of stupid stuff. And I fell asleep at 3 a.m. on that Saturday morning. And it was probably honestly the best night's sleep I've had even to this day. And I didn't get out of bed until 5:00 Sunday.
Wow.
I went to the Jack in the Box. I grabbed myself a waffle sandwich. And if this sounds like I've told this story before, I have, because it's still just as vivid today as it was then. I sat down on that couch with that waffle sandwich and I took a bite. And I remember saying to myself, dude, that was a gnarly trip, dude. Because I mean, okay, so I've never been the type of person that's like, hey, man, like, God talks to me and that sort. I know I grew up coming up in the First Assemblies of God, but I had switched over to like Baptist churches and stuff where that's just not a thing.
Right.
And I know that your average person listening to this, they're like, dude, whatever, man, that's crazy. You clearly a drug-induced hallucination. Okay, dude, bet. If that's what you think, that's fine. But sober as the day is long, that next day at 5:00, when I took a bite of that sandwich, I said, dude, that's a gnarly trip. That voice came to me again and said, I'm still here and I'm not letting you go. And bro, my life changed forever from that moment. I didn't quit drinking immediately. I had about a month after that of doing the whole Romans 7, the thing I want to do. I don't do the thing I don't want to do. I keep on doing that. Sin was just grabbing a hold of me and it wouldn't let me go. And finally I had one night of drinking. I said, God, I don't want to do this anymore. That's it. You either kill me, take me out of this world, take me home now, or you get me out of this. I'm willing to do whatever it takes, whatever you want me to do. I'm yours. I surrender. It's all you. Just get me out of this. I don't want to live like this anymore. And the next day I drove home from work. There was construction in my normal path. I was a creature of habit. And that construction made me drive by a Lifeway Christian bookstore. And that voice told me to go inside that store. It said, I have something for you. And I went in there and like a laser guided missile, it guided me over to the Bible section. And there was this Tyndale Life Application Study Bible, NIV. And I picked it up and I purchased it. It was 80 some dollars and some change. It was all my booze money. I was a budgeting drunk. And so I spent my booze money on a Bible, and I never drank again.
Oh,
To
wow.
this day, bro. To this day, I never drank again.
Amen to that.
All of a sudden, all of my desire to drink and for porn and for drugs, all of it went straight into reading this book. And I went home and I started reading from in the beginning, and I got all the way through the course of like 3 or 4 months. I got all the way through to the end of Even So Come, but this time something was radically different, dude. I told you before that I'd read that book when I was a kid, but it was different this time. I didn't see my guilt and my condemnation on every page. I didn't see all the ways I couldn't live up to what God had wanted for me. What I saw was Jesus on every page. I had never noticed this before. And people who've been following Jesus for a long time and they've read the Bible, they see things like the parallels of the gospel in the Genesis story, you know, when the fall happened and the animal gets slain, right?
Right.
So that live animal that was killed to cover their nakedness and their sin, like I had never put 2 and 2 together that was a foreshadowing of what Jesus would do for me on the cross. I had no idea that was a thing. And so I started seeing that, and then I moved on, you know, to like Noah and his ark. And I started to see that, well, the ark is Jesus holding us in there, and Jesus is the door that closes behind us. And then once it closes, he's never letting you go. You're not going to do anything to mess this up. You're his. When you become totally his, you're his. There's nothing you can do about it. And I started to see in the story of David and Goliath. I had never heard. I know Matt Chandler did this thing where he's like, yo, you're not David. If anything, you know, you're the scared Israelite in the corner, sucking his thumb, crying for his mommy. I think
I know the study you're talking about.
You know what I'm saying, dude? Like I looked at that story and I started to see the reality that David was a type of Christ and Goliath was sin and death, the thing that I could never beat ever. And that Jesus, he did that. And then now that he killed sin and death, we now have the enemy on the run, and that I'm empowered to follow him. Now I can beat alcoholism. I can beat porn addiction. I can not do these things anymore. I have the freedom to do that because of what he's done for me in my life. And it radically changed my perspective. And around that time, my wife now and I started dating, and we didn't do it right, dude. I totally messed the pooch up on that one. I punted it into the stands. You know, we were living together when we first got together and that sort of thing. But I married her within like 4.5, I think, or 5 months of us moving in together. I asked her to marry me before we moved in together. And we got married. And then I think not even 6 months after that, I was serving in student ministry as a worship leader with the kids. And then not long after that, I was asked to be the college pastor. And I did that for a couple of years, or 3 years before I ended up becoming a pastoral intern. But that didn't happen until I got cancer, of all things.
Oh,
it's
wow.
a pretty wild story, dude. So because of my time overseas, I'm one of the beneficiaries of the PACT Act. So the burn pits and all that crap, dude. All that stuff that I had inhaled, like I smoked, man. I was smoked like a freight train. And most of my friends, dude, when they found out I had cancer, none of us were surprised that I had cancer. Okay, just real talk. Everybody was really shocked that it wasn't lung cancer because of how much I smoked and how much I drank. I was just not. I was that guy. Like, Brooks, do you like work or do you just smoke and take work breaks? Like that. That was the kind of smoker I was. So I ended up getting Hodgkin's lymphoma in 2017. I went into the doctor, dude. I went to the emergency room thinking that I had a kidney stone because my back was just it was hurting. And it wasn't like the typical hurt from my back injury. But I went in there, dude, and the guy was like, hey, you don't have a kidney stone. Good news is you don't have a kidney stone. Bad news, bro. You're showing big markers for lymphoma, and your lymph nodes are swollen up the size of softballs, bro. That's why your back is hurting right now.
Oh, wow.
Because your lymph nodes in your back are swollen that big. You need to not play around with this, dude. You need to go talk to your doctor. I'm like, Roger that, dude, as I'm typing the number to my doctor while he's talking to me. Long story short, I ended up going through about a year's worth of treatment. Through that series of events, I was working at AT&T when I got out. I worked for them for a decade. before I went into full-time ministry.
Mm-hmm.
God used cancer to pull me out of that into full-time ministry. The church that I was attending, it was a huge, I don't know what you call it, a mega church. They had like 800 people when I started attending there, but it slowly dwindled down. There was a lot of changes going on. The lead pastor kind of passed off the church to another guy. There was a whole lot of craziness going on, and that church ended up dwindling down and starting basically having to become a new church plant in Lubbock. And I got on as a pastoral intern with that church. And so I was a pastoral intern there for a year. Then I became the youth pastor and media director there. And I served as a worship leader, with the worship team there off and on as needed and that kind of thing.
Yeah. So they kept you busy.
Crazy. Oh yeah, dude, it was nuts. And so all that to say, like, that's kind of my journey, how I got into the military and through the military. Really what the story really is about what Jesus has done in my life. I have a wife and 3 beautiful children. Like, that promise was absolutely true. A year later, I was in a new city. I had a new house, a new wife, and a new life. And unbeknownst to me at the time, a year later, my son was on the way. My firstborn son was on the way.
Oh, wow.
And so all that to say, dude, look at what God can do in the time span of a year. And so the reason why I feel led to share my story is I know for a fact that I'm not the only guy who's had something like that happen, who's been in that dark place that they felt they couldn't get out of.
Right.
And God did that for me. And if he did that for me, bro, he can do it for anybody.
Yeah. Amen. And that's really what this is all about. It's letting other veterans, even my own story, which I published a while back, is the purpose is not, just to tell our stories just so it'll be out there. It's really, we want to share that there is hope and how we found it. And that's really what the focus is. It's focused on what Jesus does when you trust him, when you give it up to him. And that's really the hard part, is giving it up to him. A lot of times, especially when you're a new Christian and you're way into your adult life, you don't know what that means. We read the scripture, give it up to God, give it up to God. We don't know what that means.
Right.
So when you come into community, when you submit and you let your pastors or some sort of guidance come into your life to teach you how to do that as a new believer, it connects those dots for you, and you are eventually able to lift it up. And so the idea is that someone who experienced a lot of the same things that we did, going overseas and fighting our country's battles, and then coming home with those wounds, there is hope.
And dude, like, I would also say too, I'm not in any way completely recovered. I am recovering,
we all
I'm
are.
still, and I think that's an important thing to mention, that like it happens in stages. I have a buddy of mine, Chuck Aaron, his story, dude, like, he's not a believer, man, and I hope to connect you with him so that maybe you can help him become one, because that dude will tell you some war stories, dude, from Fallujah that will curl your toes and throw your hair back. But when he came home, he heard a little bit about my story. He knew me pre-Jesus and that sort of stuff. And those kind of friends, they're just the best, honestly, because they've seen you at your absolute worst, and they choose to love you anyway. You know what I mean?
Right.
But one of the things Chuck said that that's kind of stuck with me, dude, is that we all have to redefine the mission when we come home.
Yeah.
And that was, for me, that was such a crucial, that was what I was trying to do with the whole band thing. I was trying to redefine my mission, try to give my life some sense of purpose, because when you get out, you no longer have that purpose. I think that's why so many guys go down to the VFW or the American Legion and end up, rotting their life away on a bar stool, telling war stories, because they just longed for that.
Yeah, this is something that I talk about a lot with a lot of my friends, and even we kind of touched on it a little bit this morning at my church.
That's awesome.
It's when your whole identity is wrapped up in the uniform that you wore. And that comes first before you, if the fruits of your life are showing that that's all there is to you, and not that you're a believer and follower in Jesus, that's a problem. And you're going to have more problems after that. But if your life is defined, and the fruits of your life, the interactions that you have with other people, show them before you even say a word that you are a believer and follower of Christ, meaning you're serving them, you're showing love, and people associate you first as a believer and follower of Jesus Christ, good things come, man. And that's where I see a lot of the people having problems when they come home is they don't know how to take the uniform off. Yeah, I'm proud of the uniform I wore. Yeah, I'm sure you are as well.
Yeah.
But first and foremost in my life, I'm a believer and follower of Jesus Christ.
Dude, there's so much more to my story and my time in the military. I went a lot more places, did a lot of other things, but I don't like talking about it. And a lot of folks ask, well, dude, why wouldn't you want to? You have these other cool stories. Well, with other friends, I'll tell you one-on-one, but really I don't want to be known for some of in my opinion, some of the worst aspects of my life. I don't want to be known for that. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's not where my identity is I don't want it wrapped up in that. And so when I talk to people, it's funny to me how it becomes a part. I think as veterans, man, you have two types. You have the first type that is like, hey, they have the bumper sticker, you know what I'm saying? The either the hoorah Marine or the hoo-yah sailor or whatever. Hey, I served in the Army. You know, I'm in the Air Force. I'm an Air Force veteran, whatever. They have that moniker all over their car, all over their hats. They wear it everywhere they go because they want everybody to know, hey, I served. And then you have the second kind who's like, you're going to see my disabled veteran plates because I get perks and benefits with that disabled veteran plate. You know what I'm saying? Like, the handicap placard or whatever, that kind of thing. Like, that's about the only way you're going to know unless you come up and ask me, hey, did you serve in the military?
Yep.
We don't really feel like that's not what defines me. I remember we were overseas, and a friend of mine, it was after a really hard day. He said, dude, you guys don't even know it, man, but these are the best days of your life. And bro, this was not my finest hour. I remember telling him specifically, dude, if this is the best my life is ever going to get, then dude, just kill me now. I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. This is stupid. Like I was hating life at that point. But I think it articulates a thing that you can either be defined by your past and who you were, or you can find your identity in Christ in who you are today as a new creation.
Amen to that.
And I think that's probably been truly, that's been the hardest part of being a Christ follower. It's not sinning, because I think that a lot of folks, I think that people that struggle with habitual sin, like addiction and that sort of stuff, I don't think that it's so much that the sin is that hard for them to get over. I think it's because they haven't found who they are in Jesus first, and just learned how to be in that. Because what we do comes out of who we are. It becomes a natural outpouring. That fruit is the natural outpouring of who we are on the inside. And I think that when we believe that we are defiled, we do defiling things. Conversely, when we know that we are redeemed, when we know that we are loved, when we know that we are sons or we are daughters in our Father's house, we act accordingly as well. And I think that is probably been the hardest thing, is redefining who I am based on the fact that I'm a son in my dad's house now. I mean, even as a pastor, bro, like these last few years, I really had a hard time because there were many moments where I slipped into having my identity defined as being, well, I'm a worship pastor, or I'm a pastor, or I'm a youth pastor, I'm this, I'm a servant in God's house, and that's who I am. But the reality is that's not who I am. That's just something that I get to do.
Yeah.
And I think that if you base your identity in what you do, eventually on a long enough timeline, what you do will become drudgery. It will be a burden to you. It will not be a blessing. It will choke the life out of you. So you have to, man, that the identity piece in Christ, that really is the key to success in all of those things.
Yeah, that's crucial.
If you want that freedom, that, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. If we want that liberty, if we no longer want to be captives, then we have to embrace who we are as sons in our Father's house. Because without that, we are the guy that we used to be. Without that, we are that person. And nobody can live up under that kind of weight, bro.
Indeed. So you mentioned earlier that you are going through therapy now. So there's a part of your story that I'm hearing that a lot of your healing, and before I go any further with that, I want to touch on something else you said as well that is parallel to this, is that we are not ever in a point of we are healed, but we are recovering. And that's an important distinction. And I remember when I was going through the regeneration ministry, very similar to Celebrate Recovery, for those of you that are familiar with it. We always introduced ourselves as I'm recovering from whatever. It's never I'm recovered past tense, because it's a process and it's something that we're always going to carry with us. But instead of it being a burden, God has taken that and turned it into a blessing that we now have it as a tool in our tool belts to reach others who have experienced something similar. And so what you said a little bit ago was that you're finding that you are recovering not just through serving and being a servant of the Lord and his kingdom, but also you're going through therapy as well. How's that going for you?
It's going. No, I'm teasing. No, it's going decently. I think really I'm starting to get into that place now where I've had to open the boxes that were marked too painful to deal with for years. I'm not ready to talk about any of that stuff publicly by any means. But
no, that's fair.
Between me and my wife and our therapist together, because my wife is, she's my caregiver. She's my primary caregiver and all this stuff, dude. And man, I'll brag on her all day long, every day.
As we should.
You're just amazing and the best. I punched way above my weight class, dude. I married way above my status. Like,
right on.
God, I am blessed beyond measure with my wife. She is absolutely amazeballs, dude.
Outstanding.
The stuff that she has put up with, man, and the grace that she has given me over and over again that I don't deserve, has just been tremendous in that. And it's gone a long way to healing stuff. But as far as the therapy itself, it's a slow burn process with that. I think that a lot of folks, what I have noticed is that when you tell people you're in therapy, they, especially as a pastor, they look at you kind of sideways. It's okay to be in therapy, dude. It's 2024, for goodness sakes, dude. Like even as Christians, folks are like, well, wait a minute, you mean to tell me you're not completely healed? Like, because I deal with folks that come out of the Word of Faith thing that say, by his stripes, I'm completely healed and addiction has no hold over me. Well, here's the reality. Addiction has no hold on me right now. I'm not addicted to those things. I don't walk by a bottle of booze at a restaurant or anything, or by a bar somewhere and go, oh man, I'd really like to have that right now. I don't have that. And I would have the freedom in Christ to enjoy that. I'm not going to. I just don't want to anymore. That desire is not there in me. So it's a matter of like but at the flip side of that same coin, I know too that if I went and bought a bottle of alcohol and started drinking today, I would very easily slip back into my addiction that quick. And so I'm not going to give the opportunity for that, because one, I don't need to. My health would not tolerate that kind of behavior anymore. But two, it just wouldn't be good for me mentally, and it wouldn't be good for my kids. I have them to think of with that.
Yeah.
And the therapy has helped a lot. I think in that it's given the place where there's somebody there with a third party that's willing to give tools to talk about what's going on. There's a book that she recommended that I started reading a while back called The Body Keeps Score. I'll text you the author. It's a doctor that I can't pronounce his name, dude. Forgive my filthy American tongue. But he's really
I'll
brilliant.
Put it in the show notes when you send it.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Because it really has helped. When you read the first, people listen to this, if you're dealing with post-traumatic stress and that kind of stuff, dude, it really talks about it talked about a lived experience that this guy had. He would get doors would slam and he would get angry at his kids out of nowhere for nothing, for no reason. And then he would leave his house and he would go and drink because he was like, why am I such an evil person? what is going on. We'll come to find out through reading the book. You get to know his story a little bit more. He was a Vietnam vet. He was a Marine. He had some trauma from some of his time while he was in, and the stuff that he was experiencing that he didn't understand where these emotions were coming from and why they were being triggered. His kids were laughing and giggling, and it would make him angry. Well, right before his friend was blown up in an explosion by one of the local kids there, kids were outside playing and laughing, and so that was tied to that. Those sorts of things. And the reason why I say that, I would not have. This book articulates this guy would never have known that that was what was causing it had he not gone through therapy and talked to his counselor. These things wouldn't have come to light. And well, the dude, I think his name in the book is Tom. He used just some pseudonym or whatever, but Tom ended up having a lovely life. He went back to his wife and his kids. He was able to he wasn't able to he wasn't completely healed. He still had to deal with nightmares and that kind of stuff, but he was able to recognize what was happening. And he was able to have a conversation with his children to where they were able to help dad whenever those types of things happen. And at least the kids knew when they talked to the kids were like, well, dude, at least we know it's nothing personal. It's not that he hated us. That
it's not us. It's what he went through. You
know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that book would really help a lot of your listeners that deal with that kind of thing.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Of course, there are a lot of vets too that didn't necessarily go to war and get blown up or get shot at that are dealing with things too, man. I mean, a lot of sexual assault and that kind of stuff took place and those kinds of things. And so I think there's a lot of other things that guys went through that just the pulling out, if you were on body detail, like you didn't necessarily have to get shot at in order to have to deal with that stuff, dude. That comes
it's not exclusive to any certain set of parameters.
Yeah, and that's an important distinction I think that people need to understand too. So because there's a lot of folks that are dealing with that stuff, they're like, well, I wasn't kicking down doors and shooting people in the face, so therefore I don't need help with this. That's not necessarily true, dude.
Right.
You probably have some things that you need to deal with as well.
Yeah,
and I think that's an important thing that people need to deal with. So that book, The Body Keeps the Score, it talks a lot about that. It's given us some really helpful tools to notice when those things happen. You can't stop necessarily the feelings that they invoke, but the house that I grew up in as a kid, I didn't have healthy coping mechanisms with my emotions. My parents taught me to just shut up, stuff that stuff down. When you're in an abusive environment, a lot of times the mom you'll see this in women specifically, they try to just keep the kids quiet and they get angry at the kids for crying because the kids crying will upset the bad man. And then trigger in a thing there. That's a thing with that. And so that I think it's an important thing that book kind of explains all of that too.
Yeah.
So at least.
Well, what it sounds like you're describing then, at least as far as your experience goes, is that combined with being a pastor and then serving the kingdom and finding partial healing through that, your therapy sessions give you a safe environment to unpack the things that are in the darkness and bring them into light and allow God to take hold of those in your life and not necessarily deliver you from what happened, but to help you in your life and not let those things have a hold over you.
Exactly. That I think you hit the nail on the head of what I was trying to get to. It gave me an opportunity to own those things, and those things no longer own me. I own the booze. I own all of those things now. They don't have any hold on me whatsoever.
Yeah,
and I think that's
one of the things I told my wife a long time ago is that I may have PTSD, but PTSD does not have me.
Dude, like seriously, bro, that is. I don't want to gloss over that. That is probably one of the most profound statements that anybody could make in regards to that. That is the difference, I think, as a Christ follower, dude.
Yeah.
As opposed to an
unbeliever.
Him. We own it. Yeah. Because of what Jesus did, we own it. It does not own us.
Right.
And I think that's the distinction where it doesn't have to define you. It doesn't have to define who you are or what you do. You mentioned the serving thing, and this is something that's kind of been on my heart a lot lately. A lot of times we as the church, obviously I'm a pastor, so this is something that really gets to me, and I've spent a lot of time, pouring over it. Our discipleship track in America stinks. It's just not good. And what I mean by that is that the typical discipleship track in America, in the American evangelical church, I don't know if I'm not necessarily talking about the Reformed theology folks,
Mhm.
or people that are necessarily even, I would say Baptist, but I mean every Baptist church is different, especially in the South. Um, but people that are not in really long-term established churches, the American evangelical church, it's kind of the modern non-denom world, which is essentially where I'm coming out of.
Mhm.
The discipleship track usually looks like this. All right, guys, we're preaching the sermon. The sermons are designed and primarily put towards, let's get you to make a decision. Once you've made your decision to follow Jesus, let's get you in the tank and dunk you. And then immediately after that, we want to get you serving, because how we disciple you is to service. And they kind of just said, hey, as you serve, you're going to be discipled. You'll get to know Jesus better, and you'll kind of deal with all of those other things. But in depending upon, forgive the vernacular, but kind of like depending upon where you are in your sanctification process, depends
Yeah.
upon where in the church we're going to allow you to serve. So if you're not that sanctified yet, you just came to Jesus yesterday, and you're still cussing and drinking up a storm and smoking cigarettes, I might let you work in the coffee ministry and make the coffee. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And that's kind of, I think we've done a huge disservice with that, because what we've done is we've said, instead of taking responsibility for the discipleship piece of it, and actually taking people under our wings, and doing one-on-one discipleship with them, and putting them in those small groups, and making sure those small groups have different teams within them to disciple one another.
Mhm.
Um, I think that's kind of a place where we're missing out on the ability to really get the help that we need. Because I think when I was in Lubbock, when I first came to know Jesus, the church that I was serving in, they had these, it's probably my favorite small group I've ever been a part of. Had some really sweet friends in there. But the small group itself had maybe, I want to say, 3 or 4 different families, including mine. And those guys and those gals that were in there, like, they were such an amazing, like, to this day I still call those people and talk to them, like we're still great friends, and we still love on each other. But a lot of the healing that I had early on in my walk with Jesus came from those men pouring into me and praying for me and praying with me.
Yeah, and having
You
those
said something
vulnerable
earlier.
moments where you're connecting on a deeper level.
Exactly. And I think that's where a lot of veterans in particular, I didn't really talk a lot in our time together about my experience with the church, like in its role in my recovery. It played a
Mhm.
huge role in that. It gave me all the things that as a veteran I was looking for: community, camaraderie,
Yeah.
that whole, even esprit de corps, confidence in your unit's accomplishments. Like, I was able to get that with the outreach and stuff that we did. Like, that really does fill that gap that we've been longing for, that a lot of
Mhm.
guys are longing for when they get out. And the irony I feel is that a lot of churches, and I'm not saying every church by any means, but a lot of churches, even some of the ones that I've been a part of, they don't know how to take guys like us.
Right.
They just don't. We can come across, we're loud a lot of times, mostly because we're deaf. Um,
Well, there's that.
there is that. But they brash in some areas, but passionate. And a lot of times passion can come across as anger, not
Mhm.
meaning to be, but that intensity and that level of intensity is not for everybody. And unfortunately, I think Hollywood has done you and I a huge disservice, bro, and just painted us in this corner like we're a ticking time bomb waiting to blow up. Like,
Mhm.
you know what I'm saying? And I think, I can't remember that Shia LaBeouf movie that he did. I don't know if you've seen it. He played a Marine coming home from Iraq, and he was clearly, the whole movie is him trying to get over his buddy having an affair with his wife while he
Hmm.
was overseas and that kind of stuff.
I don't think I've heard of
It
that
was
one.
I'll try to find it, dude, and I'll see if I can't, like, DM it to you or text it to you, dude. But it was, the way the movie was portrayed. Shia LaBeouf played this character, and it turns out, like, through the whole movie, this post-apocalyptic looking journey in the movie, he was actually just a crazy guy, who went nuts after he came home from the war. He almost shot his kid and that kind of thing. He ends up dying because the cops end up breaking in the house to having to break their doors down to get him. And so that to me, that is the typical, like what people think when they hear the words, the letters PTSD, they think that that's going to be what happens, that the guy's just waiting to come in and like shoot up the place or something. And that's just not true.
Right.
That's not who we are. It's not what we do. That, I mean, if anything, if anybody knew the reason for, I believe the reason for the veteran suicide rate being as high as it is because we love people, we love the people that we fought for to protect so much, we would rather off ourselves than allow any one of them to be hurt. And
I think there's logic to that.
It's evil, it's wicked, it's demonic, it's disgusting. But I think that's what the devil plays on in those moments on those people. He tells them that lie that, you know, if they knew what you did, if they saw you in those moments, man, they really
wouldn't love you. Yeah.
Love you, you know, and I know that we've heard those. And if you're listening right now and that's you, bro, that is straight from the enemy. That's not from God. That's not truth. If they did know what you went through, they wouldn't pity you and feel sorry for you. They'd love you and they try to help you and care for you.
And so walk alongside you.
Yeah. Indeed. And I think it would be cool if churches actually did a little bit more outreach in that particular area with veterans specifically. Because the VA, man.
The VA only does so much. And they're a government organization, so they have to stay secular.
Right. And I appreciate the effort. Like I hate this because like I'm 100% disabled, so I get all of my care from the VA, and I appreciate the medical care that I receive. So saying this does not negate the fact that the people that take care of me are amazing folks. They're good at what they do for the most part. But as an organization, as an institution, especially when it comes to mental health, bro, they're a joke.
Yeah,
like that is the nicest thing that I can say about it. It's a freaking joke.
Yeah,
if you go to these. The support groups, man. Have you ever sat through one of them things, dude?
Thankfully, no.
Don't. It's a waste of time. And seriously, it usually have like one or two dudes in there that are like, bro, I just came here to get help with my paperwork. I don't need to want to sit around and talk about this. And then it's like two or three dudes. But they don't tell them like it's trauma that they're reliving. They tell them like they're reliving the glory days of a high school prom, man. It's ridiculous and whack. It doesn't help anybody. And then when you go to their mental health to talk to them, the first thing they want to do is give you some sort of pill or medication before they ever even really hear your story. And I don't understand. I don't know what we can do to change that.
I have no idea. Other than reaching people as they're coming off the plane, short of that, I have no idea.
I mean, if maybe as the church, if we had more small groups that were kind of geared towards helping that particular segment of the population, but we're also scattered. We're also scattered when we come home, though, and dude, we're kind of hard to find unless we are looking for help. We're kind of hard to find.
Yeah,
you know? And we tend to suffer in silence with that, and so
there's unfortunately that. Well, so it sounds like from everything that you experienced. When you came home, you went through some things. You tried to medicate your hurt and your wounds, your internal wounds with a lot of the alcohol, a lot of the porn addiction, trying to get that rush, trying to fill the void, trying to put a Band-Aid over it, right?
Indeed.
And once you really came to Christ and submitted to him, you found a lot of the healing through getting involved in your church, through serving, through digging deep into your relationships and getting that real fulfillment from having Christ focused, Christ loving relationships with other people that knew you, right? Yeah. And allowed them to be known by you.
Yeah.
What was that? I missed it.
That was the hard part. Letting people get to know you.
Yeah.
That was the hard part.
It is.
Yeah, truly. That is where it all came from, dude.
But it's crazy that's one of the things that as humans we long for the most is to be known. But it's also the one thing that we also fear the most is to be known.
Well, because we're afraid to be known and rejected.
Right, right. It's almost a paradoxical effect, but once you put it into the right proper light, it's not. But when you do that, there's a lot of healing that comes in that, and then couple that with your experience with your therapy sessions as well, that it's having a huge positive effect for you, that you're allowing to take ownership of the PTSD. And that's one thing I want to leave everybody here with, is that we and especially on the show, we talk about the mental health aspect. A lot of it is understanding that yes, we have PTSD, but like I said earlier, PTSD does not own us. Through Christ, we are able to overcome that and take that and use that as a tool to the glory of his kingdom, to reach other people who are experiencing the same thing. And so if there's anybody out there who's listening to this tonight or in the afternoon or wherever you're listening to it, and you're seeing the darkness in front of you, I hope you hear Paul's story and find hope in that he found hope. And it's not just him, but y'all can find it too. Every one of us. The admission's been paid for you.
Indeed.
And I hope that message is striking home with whoever's listening and wanting to find hope, that it's there. And for everyone else, I want to extend a huge thank you to Paul here for sitting down and telling us his story tonight and allowing others to hear it as well. That's a huge thing, and allowing yourself to be vulnerable on air is a big thing. And so thank you for that, Paul.
Thank you for having me, John.
Indeed.
I really appreciate the work you're doing here, brother.
Awesome. Thank you. So from that, everyone else, thank you for tuning in. If you're a veteran yourself and you're hearing this and you have a story that you would like to share, please let me know. I'd love to host you and give you your platform, and hopefully try to encourage somebody else at the same time. If you know any other veterans, please share this channel with them and let them hear it and contact us, and just share it with your friends. Don't forget to follow. I appreciate that if you do, and reach out. And I can't wait to see you guys on the next one. Bye, y'all.